Based on this ultrasound, you should not stay pregnant any longer. And today is going to be a little bit different. Today I'm going to share a personal story about one of my pregnancies and my experience with something called IUGR, Intrauterine Growth Restriction. If this is triggering to you, go ahead and skip this video. If this is something you're interested in, stick around because this gets crazy. My name is Melanie, and I am almost a licensed midwife in the state of Florida. Here, I share evidence-based facts about women's health, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, except for today. Today, I wanted to share my personal journey and really humanize this whole entire experience of motherhood and pregnancy and how messy and unknown it can be. Because even for me, who is very educated and experienced in all of this, I am still so surprised at the experience that I had. I had no idea. So at the beginning of my pregnancy, things started out a little bit rough, but normal. I was very, very sick and had just been accepted to midwifery school. I already had a toddler, and my husband was working full-time at his own business. So time off was few and far between. In my first couple weeks of school, our classes were so heavy academically. It was one of the most difficult classes that I have ever done was during that semester. And right when that class started was right when my symptoms really kicked in. I was so sick. And long story short, ended up dropping out of midwifery school because I could not focus. I was throwing up all the time, and to even sit up, I felt like the room was just spinning. It was so uncomfortable. So to sit and read books and to study complex material, it was not happening. So I dropped out, focused my time on trying my best to grow a healthy baby and be a good mom to my child that I already had and support my husband in his new business. So as things continued on, I really got involved in my husband's business. It was a lot of manual labor, but I really loved it and loved helping him with that. I always felt like I listened to my body's cues pretty well, although I do tend to be the person that goes 1,000 miles an hour and has no idea when I'm tired. So let me be honest about that. As my pregnancy continued, I went to go see my midwife at the appropriate course of care. I followed the care schedule exactly. I did all of my exams. We did my ultrasound. We did my gestational diabetes screening. We did everything by the books. I didn't miss any appointments. I was very healthy. I never smoked anything. All the risk factors that put people into that category of IUGR, I did not have, except for the fact that I was maybe working a bit too hard. So fast forward to 36 weeks. I went in for my routine appointment. I was measuring right on target, and that was that. 37 weeks came along. Now I'm going weekly at this point, and I was still measuring 36 weeks. And for those of you that don't know, when you're pregnant and you come in for your prenatal appointment, one of the things we do is measure your uterus. We call that fundal height. The fundus is the top of the uterus. So we measure from the top of the uterus all the way down to the pubic bone, and we measure in centimeters. So you should measure roughly as many centimeters as weeks you are pregnant. 2 centimeters in either direction is considered normal. So by 37 weeks, I was still measuring 36 centimeters. Okay, no big deal. By 38 weeks, I was still measuring 36 centimeters. Okay, that's still a normal range. By 39 weeks, I was still measuring 36 centimeters. Now we're a little bit concerned. So I am so grateful that my midwife was very diligent about taking her measurements, and I want to say that for any providers that are watching to please not underestimate the importance of an accurate fundal height for this exact reason. I was so cognizant of my baby's movements. She was super active at night. I felt very sure that she was in good health. There was no alarms going off to me at all. I was very aware of her, and throughout the day when I felt like I was busy, I always stopped to pay attention and make sure I still felt her move, and I always did. So at that visit, when my midwife said, look, I don't really like how you're measuring, and to be honest, 36 centimeters is even a stretch for how you're measuring. So I want you to go do an ultrasound to make sure that your baby's in good condition. If she's in good condition, then we'll just keep continuing the pregnancy. If not, we'll have another conversation. So she sent me to get the ultrasound. I went immediately, and went to go get it. This ultrasound that I went to get is a specific type of ultrasound that we recommend when we suspect a growth issue. It's called a biophysical profile, or a BPP. This measures a few key markers. This measures the baby's heart rate. This measures their respiration movements. This measures the grade of the placenta. It measures the amniotic fluid, and it measures the tone of the baby. So I had this ultrasound by a fantastic midwife who has been practicing for a long, long time, and we had a really great conversation about the whole thing. And she took her pictures, she did everything that she needed to do, and then, we were on our way. So a few hours later, I received a phone call from my midwife, and she said, "So, based on this ultrasound, you should not stay pregnant any longer." Essentially, what was happening is that my placenta was no longer giving my baby the nutrients that she needed to thrive. And that is essentially what causes IUGR, or also known as FGR, depending on who you're speaking to. Either way, it means that there's not enough nutrients going to the baby for the baby to grow. There's lots of different types of IUGR and fetal growth restriction, and I can do a whole video on that. If you're interested, just let me know in the comments below, because it can get very complex. But essentially, the measurements that categorize IUGR is that the baby should be no less than the 10th percentile. And my baby, mind you, had been measuring in the 75th percentile all of pregnancy. And she was now in the 10th percentile. So very mild, but definitely something was not right. And my midwife said, "You really shouldn't stay pregnant any longer. The placenta is not providing what she needs, and she doesn't look great. So we're going to need to try some things to get you into labor naturally," because I was planning a home birth, "or we're going to have to go into the hospital for an induction." And I want to be very honest about my stance. I am a home birth midwife. I have full faith in what our bodies are made to do. And midwives, at least in the state of Florida, are extensively trained in out-of-hospital birth. We carry a lot of meds with us, a lot of the same meds that they have at the hospital, and there are a lot of things we can do at home. For a low-risk, normal pregnancy, home birth is very safe. However, I am never against going to the hospital, ever. The hospital is a wonderful and fantastic place, especially for emergencies. Anything that is not low risk and normal should be at the hospital. So I just want to be very clear about my stance on that. And it's okay if you don't agree with me. That sounds fair. I really wanted this home birth. I didn't have one with my first child, but if hospital is where my baby is safer, I will go there, no questions asked. So we tried a few natural things. I was only 3 days before my due date, and my labor kicked in very quickly. So we were able to wait for my mom to fly in that night. She got a last minute ticket, and we did the things that were recommended to me by my midwife, and my labor kicked in. From the moment that I had my first contraction, she was in my arms 2 hours later, which was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. A labor that fast, I'm honestly a fan of it, but it was a little bit shocking. And I'm so grateful to say that she is still living, alive and well. It could have ended very differently had my midwife not been so vigilant. And I am so grateful for that. When I saw her and held her, she felt so little. She was actually not that small for a baby with IUGR because she was very, very borderline. It was late onset IUGR, which is the most mild type that you can have. And it was caught right away, which is the only reason that my midwife was even okay with me staying home in the first place, because it was really, really on the border. So when we weighed her, we agreed that if she was any less than 5.5 pounds, then we would go to the hospital so that she could be monitored by NICU. And when we weighed her, she was 5 pounds and 12 ounces. So I was so thrilled that we could stay home, and she was looking great. Her muscle tone was really good. She was breathing fantastic. She passed all of her exams with flying colors. And I was just so thankful that things ended up that way. But it was very different for me because I had already had a healthy, almost 8-pound baby. And now to have a tiny little 5-pound, 12-ounce baby was, for me, very surprising. I remember how skinny she looked when she was born, that she didn't have all of the fat tissue around her pelvis that I am used to seeing. And her face looked so little. So it was a little bit sad in those first moments. My mom had to run out and get preemie clothes because all of her newborn clothes didn't fit. And I remember holding the preemie diapers and putting it on her tiny little body, and she felt so small and fragile, and it was a little bit scary, but I knew that she was okay. And if anything had ever looked like it wasn't okay, I would have taken her straight in. Like I said, I am not against doctors. I am not against the hospital. I think that it is a very great place when you need to be there. And if she ever needed to be there, I would have taken her. So, but I say that to say, from having a bigger baby to then having a teeny tiny little baby, it was a little bit surprising for me. So anyways, I remember putting the preemie diapers on her thinking, wow, how lucky are we that we caught this when we did, because I know the type of babies that I make, and for me, this is a really small baby. And I also thought about all the moms who, unfortunately, it didn't get caught in time. And in those cases, it ends in a stillbirth. And my sincere condolences to you if you have ever experienced that as a mom to mom. I really cannot imagine going through that experience. And I am always here if you'd like to send me any messages about that. But I felt a little bit nervous and very grateful all at the same time. And I remember feeding her, and it was the most satisfying feeling to feed her little body and to hear her drinking milk and to know that she was getting nourished. And she grew so fast. She grew so fast. By her 6-week appointment, she was almost 10 pounds. She grew so fast, which I'm so grateful for, because sometimes babies that are born with IUGR are small for their whole entire lives. And I'm just very thankful that that was not her case. And she is a happy and thriving little 3-year-old girl who is now in the 95th percentile. So for sure, she did have a growth restriction, because if she had stayed in like the 15th percentile in childhood, that would seem more normal that she was small when she was born. But to know that this was her potential, just a confirmation that it was in fact IUGR. So anyways, I fed her lots, made sure that she never slept too long without eating. That's a really big importance when you have a smaller baby, whether they have IUGR or not. Especially with a smaller baby, you do not want them to sleep very long without eating, because they have a harder time controlling their glucose and their temperature levels. So that was quite a chore, and for the first few weeks I was so exhausted, but of course all that passed, and it was well worth it to see her grow and become chunky and rolly and just a buttery little baby. So I just wanted to take a moment and be vulnerable with you guys. That's something I have not done on this channel yet. I really do try to focus on evidence-based facts, answering the most common questions that I get asked in prenatal visits, and providing you with a lot of valuable education to the best of my ability. But I felt a calling to get a little bit personal and really get to know each other a little bit more. I really look forward to growing my community on this channel, and pretty soon I'm going to offer one-on-one calls and more things to really be able to meet and bond with each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to my story, and I would love to hear about anything you want to share about your pregnancy journeys in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.